The world isn't really in a frozen static conflict anymore. We've moved beyond that Cold War 2.0 framework. We're now operating deep inside a phase that, well, we have to call it hot peace. It's defined by weaponized interdependence, resource coercion, and, the unilateral use of force.
And the first week of 2026 just gave us all the proof we needed. It was high velocity and definitive. We saw the U.S. execute a really shocking intervention, the judicial extraction of a sovereign leader in Caracas. And this happened at the exact same moment that three major counterpowers, China, Russia, Iran, are running a massive naval exercise off the coast of South Africa. The whole globe is heating up and fracturing all at once.
This is neural pulse. Let's analyze. Okay, let's unpack that Caracas shockwave first. The precedent it sets is, it's probably the biggest geopolitical event of the year so far.
Yeah.
The operation on January 3rd was brutal, it was precise, and it was fast. U.S. Special Forces went in, targeted Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, and just whisked them out.
What's really fascinating here, and frankly deeply worrying, is the legal camouflage they used. This is an attempt at regime change that is dressed up completely as law enforcement. By using these old, long-standing narco-terrorism charges, the U.S. tried to legitimize a military operation, an operation designed to bypass international law, to bypass the UN Charter's basic prohibition on using force against another country. It's a new doctrine, judicial extraction.
And while the framing was legal, the action itself was raw military force. Reports are confirming at least 40 casualties during that mission. This was not some clean warrant execution. Maduro is now, awaiting trial in New York.
He is, and the outcome really confirms the true political objective here. The U.S. immediately installed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as the interim leader. But that installation, it came with language we almost never see so openly. White House statements confirm she stays in power only as long as she, and I'm quoting here, does what we want. The transactional nature is just completely out in the open.
The strategic motive couldn't be clearer. Just a few days later, January 9th, the president met with the CEOs of ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips. If you need a smoking gun for resource control, that meeting is it.
That meeting, though, was really just the curtain raiser. The real genius, if you want to call it that, was the legal move that came with it. The true barrier for U.S. corporations in Venezuela wasn't the political regime. It was the mountain of international creditor claims against the state oil company, PDVSA.
So tell us about that legal solution, because that's the real finesse here, isn't it?
It is. It was a presidential executive order that acts as a kind of financial shield. This order explicitly blocks creditor claims against any of PDVSA's revenues. Without that, any money U.S. companies made rebuilding the oil fields could be seized immediately by international courts. By putting those assets under U.S. Treasury control, Washington has legally cleared the path.
So the goal isn't just oil. It's about neutralizing the entire legal and financial barrier to entry. It effectively locks China and Russia out of the hemisphere's biggest oil reserves and lets American companies rebuild that infrastructure with legal impunity. That's a huge win for Washington.
It is, but it comes with immense risk. This deployment of force in Caracas has immediately created instability across the entire Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And Washington has just set a very, very powerful precedent.
That precedent leads us directly north, doesn't it? The fallout wasn't just contained to the Caribbean. How has this destabilized Mexico?
The pressure on Mexico is now immense, and it's precisely because of that Caracas precedent. The doctrine of judicial extraction now exists. It's a ready-made justification to intervene anywhere. The president has immediately upped the ante, threatening to, quote, hit land for military action against cartels inside Mexico. That is a direct threat to their sovereignty.
And Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is on an extremely difficult diplomatic tightrope. On one hand, she had to condemn the Venezuela intervention as a sovereignty infringement. On the other, the pressure from Washington is so intense, she told her foreign minister to coordinate closely with Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
She's performing a very delicate balancing act. She has to avoid a complete rupture with her largest trading partner, but also prevent the narrative that Mexico is a failed state. And the White House sees an opportunity here, linking the fight against narco-terrorism abroad to security problems on the U.S. southern border. If they feel justified in extracting a president, imagine the justification they feel they have for moving against non-state actors near their border.
And of course, the political blowback inside the U.S. is getting more and more intense. It connects this foreign policy aggression directly to what's happening at home. We've seen immigration enforcement escalate, leading to fatal confrontations. We have to talk about the tragedy in Minneapolis. 37-year-old U.S. citizen Renee Good, shot by ICE agents.
We absolutely do. This isn't just some unfortunate incident. It is a political firestorm. A U.S. citizen shot by a domestic enforcement agency. The optics are just devastating. What we're seeing now are protests in Dallas, Philadelphia, Portland, and they are explicitly connecting the use of force in Venezuela with the violent immigration policies at home.
That linkage is a major political liability, especially with midterm elections coming up. It gives opponents a powerful narrative, a narrative that this administration sees sovereignty, both foreign and domestic, as purely transactional.
So from this volatile situation in the West, where military power is securing oil, the focus really shifts to the Indo-Pacific. And that's where the friction has escalated very quickly into full-blown economic warfare.
Right. This is where the security dilemma just takes a quantum leap. Japan is taking a huge step by openly discussing nuclear-powered submarines.
Well, Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi has broken a long-standing political taboo just by starting this conversation. And to be crystal clear for you, the focus is strictly on nuclear propulsion systems, not nuclear weapons. They're trying to follow the IUCAS model. It would give their submarines dramatically enhanced range and speed, making them a much more credible deterrent.
But China doesn't see a technical debate, does it? They see a political opportunity. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning immediately seized on it, calling it a nuclear armament ambition.
It's a textbook deployment of cognitive warfare. China's trying to frame this under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, to internationally isolate Tokyo. They're deliberately trying to conflate nuclear propulsion with nuclear weapons.
And the escalation didn't stop with rhetoric. We're seeing immediate, tangible economic retaliation. China updated its dual-use export control list this week, and it seems very targeted.
It's being widely interpreted by senior Japanese officials as a de facto rare earth embargo. And the impact is, well, it's devastating. Rare earths are critical. You need them for everything from EV motors to missile guidance systems. This is a direct, calculated attack designed to cripple Japan's high-tech manufacturing overnight.
Is China willing to take an economic hit itself for this? I mean, an embargo like that cuts off revenue for Beijing, too.
They're betting on a short-term economic hit for a massive long-term strategic gain. If they can disrupt the supply chain for Japan's next generation of defense systems, they create a permanent advantage. Japan's finance minister is now rushing to the G7 to coordinate emergency supply chain cooperation. That tells you how severe this is. It's a real-time example of economic interdependence being fully weaponized.
So as the major powers are using economic and military might against each other, the global logistics backbone is being challenged by a powerful non-Western alliance.
Which brings us to the most visible demonstration of counterpower this month. The BRICS naval exercise, Will for Peace 2026, running right now in South Africa.
And the hardware they've deployed, it really tells the story. China brought its advanced destroyer, the Tangshan. Russia sent the corvette Stoichi. And Iran is there with the Micron, which is this massive expeditionary base ship that gives them long-range logistical support.
The location is everything here. They are operating right around the Cape of Good Hope. You have to remember, because of the extreme volatility in the Red Sea, the Cape route is now an essential alternative shipping route for global trade.
So by operating there in force, they're demonstrating a very clear chokehold capability over Western supply lines, especially oil and gas.
Exactly. And their objectives are twofold. First, yes, demonstrating that military capability, but second, and this is maybe more important, is protecting the Shadow Fleet.
Explain the Shadow Fleet for us. How does this exercise ensure it?
The Shadow Fleet is this massive network of aging, often uninsured tankers that Russia and Iran use to move illicit oil around the globe, bypassing sanctions. Western interdiction efforts are increasing, so these movements are getting riskier. By showing a joint naval capacity to patrol this critical zone, the BRICS nations are essentially institutionalizing the circumvention of Western sanctions. They're providing maritime insurance through military deterrence.
That makes the stakes of this exercise immediately clear. And these physical risks, they're paralleled by growing threats in the asymmetric domains, like cyber and space.
In cyber, we're seeing a significant technological evolution. We track the Iranian group Muddy Water, and they're now using a new remote access Trojan they call Rusty Water.
What makes Rusty Water so dangerous is that it's coded in the Rust programming language. Why does the language matter so much?
It matters intensely to the defenders. Rust is a modern language, and its complexity makes the malware highly evasive and extremely difficult for security analysts to reverse engineer. It reduces the easy targets that defenders historically relied on, which slows down their response time and gives the attackers more time inside the network.
And the real-world consequences are enormous. I mean, look no further than the Jaguar Land Rover attack in September. The Q3 results just came out. Wholesale volumes plummeted by a staggering 43.3% because of that shutdown.
That 43% drop is just staggering. That single corporate attack led to an estimated loss to the UK's GDP of $2.5 billion. It proves that cyber resilience isn't just an IT problem anymore, it's a condition of survival for a national economy.
Meanwhile, up in space, we have an unprecedented crisis on the International Space Station. NASA announced the first ever medical emergency evacuation, bringing 4 Crew 11 members home early on the SpaceX Dragon.
This is a major operational shock. It means the ISS is now left with a minimal skeleton crew of just 3 NASA astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts. That dramatically increases the operational risk on an already aging station. If something else goes wrong, their ability to respond is just drastically reduced.
It also exposes the huge medical logistics challenges for future deep space missions. If a crew needs an emergency evacuation this close to Earth, what does that mean for Artemis missions to the Moon or missions to Mars? The risk management implications are vast.
Which brings us finally to how markets are trying to adapt to this new, elevated global risk, this world of hot peace. Bitcoin, for one, reacted immediately to the instability in Venezuela.
Right. Following the news of the Maduro capture on January 3rd, Bitcoin's price spiked, and it's holding stable now near $90,000. It seems the market is interpreting this volatility in a very specific way.
It really underscores Bitcoin's growing role as a perceived censorship-resistant store of value. In countries facing hyperinflation or the risk of state-sponsored asset freezes, like Venezuela, it becomes a geopolitical hedge, not just a speculative asset. When the U.S. Treasury can seize a country's oil revenue, assets outside the traditional banking system suddenly become very attractive.
We're also seeing some interesting tech trends emerge from CES 2026 that seem to respond to this crisis environment. The big one is the rise of physical AI.
Yes, the merging of AI directly with physical hardware. Think about NVIDIA's heavy focus on robotics, AI-powered appliances, robo-taxes, all designed to fill massive global labor shortages.
And these solutions promise efficiency, but they also raise huge new questions about surveillance and privacy, especially as AI moves from your screen into your home and onto the street.
And finally, culturally, there's a clear bifurcation in the luxury market that tells us a lot about global economic confidence. Demand for high-end goods is still strong in the U.S., but it is demonstrably softening in China due to their economic headwinds and a government-encouraged shift toward patriotic consumption.
So when you put all these disparate events together, from Caracas to the Cape, from Rust to robotics, the central conclusion is clear. The world has officially shifted to a hot peace. It's a phase defined by the open use of force for resource extraction, by economic interdependence being fully weaponized, and by asymmetric risks becoming just a normal condition of survival.
And the immediate critical factor that's going to determine the trajectory for 2026 is whether the U.S. can actually stabilize its imposed administration in Venezuela. If that unilateral action leads to mission creep, sustained resistance, and a geopolitical quagmire, it's going to drain Washington's resources and focus away from the Indo-Pacific. Right at the moment, it needs to be applying maximum pressure there.
Neural Pulse. Clarity in a complex world. See you tomorrow.